Jackson's trembling hands clutched the eviction notice as his daughter slept peacefully in the next room, unaware that tomorrow they might not have a home. Little did he know that stopping to help a crying stranger named Sara would change everything, and lead him directly to Elizabeth Harrington, whose net worth exceeded billions but whose life lacked what Jackson had in abundance. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring real-life stories that remind us how unexpected kindness can transform lives. The morning sun filtered through the threadbare curtains of Jackson Miller's small apartment. At 42, his face carried the weathered lines of someone who had endured more than his share of hardship. 8 years as a single father had taught him to stretch every dollar until it screamed, but this month, no amount of financial gymnastics could save them. "Daddy, can I have Lucky Charms today?" 6-year-old Lily appeared in the doorway of their tiny kitchen, her curly brown hair still tangled from sleep, clutching her worn teddy bear. Jackson quickly folded the eviction notice and slipped it into his pocket. "Not today, sweetheart. We've got oatmeal with cinnamon and bananas, your second favorite, right?" Lily's small shoulders slumped momentarily before she nodded. "Can I have extra cinnamon?" "Extra cinnamon it is," Jackson said, forcing brightness into his voice. He'd lost his job at the manufacturing plant 3 months ago when it closed without warning. Since then, he'd been working 2 part-time jobs, morning shifts at a local coffee shop and evening hours as a janitor at an office building downtown. The pay barely covered groceries and utilities, and now he was 3 months behind on rent. After dropping Lily at school with a kiss and a promise to pick her up on time, Jackson headed to Morningside Coffee for his shift. The small cafe sat on a corner in the business district, frequented by professionals in suits who rarely made eye contact with the man who served their complicated coffee orders. "Jackson, you're on register today," his manager announced as he tied his apron. "Tina called in sick." He nodded, though his stomach tightened. Register duty meant direct customer interaction, which meant forced smiles and small talk when all he wanted to do was scream about the unfairness of it all. But he needed this job, so he took his position and prepared to face the morning rush. The hours crawled by as Jackson mechanically took orders, made change, and passed tickets to the baristas. His mind kept returning to the eviction notice. 3 days. He had 3 days to come up with 3 months back rent, or he and Lily would be homeless. It was during the mid-morning lull that he noticed her, a young woman sitting alone at a corner table, shoulders shaking as she tried to hide her tears behind a curtain of dark hair. Most customers were engrossed in their phones or laptops, but something about her quiet desperation resonated with Jackson. When his break came, instead of sitting in the back room to rest his aching feet, Jackson made 2 cups of hot chocolate and approached her table. "I hope you don't mind," he said softly, placing 1 cup in front of her. "You looked like you could use something sweet." The woman looked up, startled. Her eyes were red-rimmed, mascara smudged beneath them. She couldn't have been more than 25. "I thank you, but I can't pay for this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's on me," Jackson said, gesturing to the chair across from her. "May I?" She nodded hesitantly, and Jackson sat down, aware that his break would be over in 10 minutes. "I'm Jackson." "Sara," she replied, wrapping her fingers around the warm cup. "Thank you for this. I must look like a mess." "We all have those days," Jackson said. "Sometimes it helps to talk to a stranger. No pressure, though." Sara took a sip of her hot chocolate, then seemed to make a decision. "I just found out I'm pregnant," she said. "The father wants nothing to do with it, and I just lost my job because I've been too sick to come in. I don't know what I'm going to do." Jackson felt a pang of recognition. "I've been there, well, not exactly there, but close. My wife left when our daughter was 2 months old. Said she never wanted to be a mother. I was terrified." "How did you manage?" Sara asked, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "One day at a time," Jackson admitted. "Some days were harder than others. But my daughter, she's worth every struggle." They talked until Jackson's break ended, and he scribbled his phone number on a napkin. "If you need someone to talk to, Or if you need help finding resources, call me. Being a single parent is hard, but you don't have to figure it all out alone. Sara clutched the napkin like a lifeline. Why are you being so kind to me? Jackson shrugged. Because someone was kind to me when I needed it. That's how the world should work. He returned to his shift, feeling a strange lightness despite his own troubles. Sometimes helping someone else was the best distraction from your own problems. The afternoon passed in a blur of customers and coffee. Jackson clocked out at 2, just in time to pick up Lily from school before heading to his evening job. As he was untying his apron, his manager approached. Someone left this for you, she said, handing him an envelope. Inside was a note written on expensive stationery. Thank you for your kindness to my niece today. Please meet me at the Grand Hotel, Suite 1200, at 7 p.m. tonight. It could be worth your while. Elizabeth Harrington. Jackson frowned. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but he couldn't place it. The Grand Hotel was the most exclusive establishment in the city, a place where rooms started at prices Jackson couldn't afford even if he saved for months. Who was this Elizabeth Harrington, and how was she connected to Sara? He tucked the note into his pocket alongside the eviction notice. He couldn't make a 7 p.m. meeting. He had Lily, and his janitorial shift started at 6. But curiosity nagged at him throughout the afternoon. After picking up Lily from school, Jackson called his neighbor, Mrs. Chin, an elderly woman who sometimes watched Lily when his shifts overlapped. Mrs. Chin, I hate to ask on such short notice, but would you be able to watch Lily tonight? Something's come up. Of course, Jackson, Mrs. Chin replied. Lily can help me make dumplings. She enjoys folding the edges. Next, Jackson called his supervisor at the office building. Frank, I have a family emergency tonight. Is there any way I can make up the hours tomorrow? Frank hesitated but agreed. Jackson had never missed a shift before. At 6:45 p.m., Jackson stood outside the Grand Hotel in his cleanest jeans and button-down shirt, feeling painfully out of place among the well-dressed people entering and exiting the gleaming lobby. He almost turned around twice before gathering his courage and walking through the revolving doors. The elevator ride to the 12th floor seemed to take forever. Jackson's palms were sweating as he knocked on the door of Suite 1200. The woman who opened the door was not what he expected. Elizabeth Harrington appeared to be in her early 60s, with silver hair cut in an elegant bob and sharp blue eyes that seemed to evaluate him instantly. She wore a simple black dress that probably cost more than Jackson's monthly rent. Mr. Miller, she said, extending her hand. Thank you for coming. Please come in. The suite was larger than Jackson's entire apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Sara sat on a plush sofa, looking as uncomfortable as Jackson felt. Uncle Jackson! She exclaimed, jumping up to hug him. Before he could correct her, she whispered, Just go with it, please. Elizabeth gestured for them to sit. Sara has told me about your kindness today, Mr. Miller. She says you're a single father? Jackson nodded, confused by the direction of the conversation. Yes, my daughter is 6. And you work 2 jobs to support her? I do what I need to do, Jackson said, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. Elizabeth smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. I admire that. Family should always come first. She paused, studying him. Sara tells me you offered advice and support when she told you about her pregnancy. Jackson glanced at Sara, who was staring intently at her hands. It wasn't much. Just someone to listen. On the contrary, Elizabeth said. It was everything. You see, Sara is not actually my niece. She works for me, or rather, for the Harrington Foundation. We conduct social experiments to identify people of exceptional character. Jackson's confusion deepened. I don't understand. Let me be direct, Mr. Miller. I'm looking for someone to manage a new community outreach program for single parents. The position includes a substantial salary, flexible hours, and benefits. Based on what I've observed today, I believe you would be perfect for the role. Jackson stared at her, then at Sara, who now looked apologetic. This was a test? He asked, anger rising in his chest. You pretended to be in trouble to see if I would help? I am pregnant, Sara said quickly. That part was true. But I do work for Ms. Harrington, and yes, we were assessing your response. We've approached 15 people over the past week. You're the only one who stopped to help. Jackson stood up. I'm not interested in being part of some social experiment. I helped because it was the right thing to do, not to get a job. Which is precisely why you're the right person, Elizabeth said calmly. Please sit down. Let me explain further. Reluctantly, Jackson sat. 10 years ago, I was in Sara's position, pregnant, alone, abandoned by the child's father. The difference was I had money. What I didn't have was support or guidance. Someone like you could have made all the difference. Elizabeth's composed facade cracked slightly. My son died shortly after birth due to complications. I established the Harrington Foundation in his memory. The room fell silent. Jackson's anger deflated. I'm sorry for your loss, he said quietly. Thank you, Elizabeth replied. The foundation provides resources for single parents, particularly those in crisis. But we need people who truly understand the struggles, who have lived them. People with empathy and practical experience. She slid a folder across the coffee table. This is the job description and compensation package. Take it home, review it. The position is yours if you want it. Jackson opened the folder and nearly gasped at the salary figure, more than triple what he currently earned from both jobs combined. Why me? He asked, still suspicious. There must be more qualified people. Qualifications can be acquired, Elizabeth said. Character cannot. You showed genuine compassion to a stranger when you yourself were struggling. She paused. Yes, we know about the eviction notice. Part of our assessment includes background research. Jackson felt exposed, vulnerable. That's invasive. Perhaps, Elizabeth conceded. But necessary. The foundation deals with vulnerable populations. We need to be thorough. Jackson closed the folder. I need time to think about this. Of course, Elizabeth said, handing him a business card. Call me tomorrow with your decision. As Jackson stood to leave, Sara touched his arm. I really am grateful for what you did today. It wasn't all an act. Outside the hotel, Jackson stood on the sidewalk, the folder clutched in his hand, his mind reeling. The job would solve his financial problems instantly. No more eviction threat, no more choosing between electricity and food at the end of the month. Lily could have new shoes when she needed them, maybe even dance lessons like she'd been begging for. But something about the whole situation felt wrong. Being manipulated, tested without his knowledge. Did the end justify the means? Jackson walked slowly toward the bus stop, weighing his options. By the time he reached Mrs. Chen's apartment to pick up Lily, he'd made his decision. The next morning, Jackson called the number on Elizabeth's card. Ms. Harrington, this is Jackson Miller. Mr. Miller? Have you reached a decision? I have, Jackson said. I'm interested in the position, but I have conditions. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I'm listening. First, no more deception. If the foundation wants to test people's character, be upfront about it. Second, I want to help design the programs based on what single parents actually need, not just what looks good on paper. Those seem reasonable, Elizabeth said. Anything else? Jackson took a deep breath. Yes. I want to start a mentorship program pairing experienced single parents with new ones. People who've been through it helping those just starting the journey. Like you tried to do with Sara, Elizabeth observed. Exactly. Sometimes all you need is someone who understands, who can tell you it gets better. I think we can work with that, Elizabeth said, and Jackson could hear the smile in her voice. When can you start? 2 years later, Jackson stood at a podium in the Harrington Foundation's newly opened Family Resource Center. Beside him, Elizabeth Harrington beamed with pride as he cut the ribbon on the building that would house childcare services, job training, counseling, an emergency housing for single parents in crisis. In the front row, 8-year-old Lily clapped enthusiastically, while Sara sat next to her, bouncing her 18-month-old son on her knee. Sara now ran the mentorship program Jackson had proposed, matching experienced single parents with those who needed guidance. This center exists because one person stopped to offer kindness when it wasn't convenient, Jackson said to the gathered crowd. That's all it takes sometimes, one moment of compassion to change a life. As he stepped away from the podium, Elizabeth squeezed his hand. You've exceeded every expectation, she said quietly. I just did what needed to be done, Jackson replied. Which is exactly why I chose you, Elizabeth said. Some people are born with wealth or privilege. Others are born with something far more valuable, the capacity to care about strangers as if they were family. Later that evening, as Jackson tucked Lily into bed in their new house, a modest but comfortable home the foundation had helped him purchase, she asked a question that caught him off guard. Daddy, are you and Ms. Elizabeth going to get married? Jackson nearly dropped the book he was holding. What? No, sweetheart. Ms. Elizabeth is my boss and my friend. But she looks at you the way Princess Tiana looks at Prince Naveen in my book, Lily insisted. And you smile more when she's around. Jackson felt his cheeks warm. It's not like that, Lilybug. Now one more chapter and then lights out. But as he read, his mind wandered to Elizabeth. Their relationship had evolved from employer-employee to a genuine friendship. They'd spent countless hours working together, sharing meals, discussing ideas. He admired her vision, her determination, her quiet strength. And yes, perhaps there was something more there, something neither of them had acknowledged. The next day at the foundation offices, Jackson found himself watching Elizabeth as she led a meeting, noting the animated way she used her hands when she was passionate about a topic, the rare but transformative effect of her full smile. When the meeting ended and others filed out, Elizabeth remained, sorting through her notes. Elizabeth, Jackson said, surprising himself with his boldness. Would you like to have dinner sometime? Not to discuss work. She looked up, momentarily startled, then a slow smile spread across her face. I thought you'd never ask. Their first date was nothing like Jackson had imagined. Instead of an expensive restaurant, Elizabeth suggested they pick up Lily and go for pizza and arcade games. She arrived wearing jeans and a casual sweater instead of her usual tailored suits, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. You look different, Jackson observed as they walked into the pizza parlor. Good different or bad different? Elizabeth asked, suddenly self-conscious. Good different, he assured her. More relaxed? More you, somehow. Lily took to Elizabeth immediately, challenging her to skee-ball competitions and sharing her pizza crusts when she discovered they both liked the same dipping sauce. As they watched Lily play a racing game, Elizabeth leaned closer to Jackson. I haven't had this much fun in years, she admitted. My life has been all business and foundation work for so long. Everyone needs balance, Jackson said. Something I've learned since working with you. Elizabeth's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his own. Perhaps we've both learned from each other. Their relationship progressed slowly, deliberately. Elizabeth was careful to maintain professional boundaries at work, and Jackson appreciated her respect for his role as Lily's father. They found a rhythm that worked: family dinners at Jackson's house, quiet evenings at Elizabeth's penthouse after Lily was asleep at her grandmother's, weekend outings that increasingly included all three of them. 6 months into their relationship, as they walked through a park on a crisp autumn day while Lily ran ahead to feed the ducks, Elizabeth broached a subject they'd both been avoiding. Jackson, there's something we should discuss. As they walked through the park, Elizabeth took a deep breath. Jackson, there's something we should discuss. My position at the foundation and our relationship. Some board members have expressed concerns about a potential conflict of interest. Jackson felt his heart sink. He'd worried about this possibility, but had hoped their professionalism would prevent it from becoming an issue. I understand. What are you thinking? I've been considering stepping back from day-to-day operations, Elizabeth said, surprising him. becoming chairperson of the board instead of CEO. It would allow me to focus on long-term vision while giving you more autonomy in program development. You'd do that? Jackson asked, stopping to face her. But the foundation is your life's work. Elizabeth smiled, reaching up to touch his cheek. It was. But I'm finding that my priorities are shifting. The foundation will always be important to me, but so are you and Lily. Jackson covered her hand with his own. I don't want you to give up something you love for us. I'm not giving it up, Elizabeth clarified. I'm making room for something else I love. The word hung between them, unacknowledged until now. Love? Jackson repeated softly. Elizabeth nodded, suddenly vulnerable. Yes, Jackson. I love you. And I love Lily too. I never thought I'd have a family after losing my son, but you two have shown me it's possible to open my heart again. Jackson pulled her close, mindful of Lily's distant figure by the pond. I love you too, he whispered against her hair. We both do. 3 months later, Elizabeth officially transitioned to her new role as chairperson, and Jackson was promoted to executive director of programs. The foundation continued to thrive under their complementary leadership styles. Elizabeth's strategic vision paired with Jackson's practical understanding of clients' needs. Their personal relationship deepened as well. Elizabeth became a constant presence in their lives, helping Lily with homework, attending her school plays, and creating new family traditions. For the first time since becoming a single father, Jackson felt like he had a true partner. On Christmas Eve, after Lily had finally fallen asleep in eager anticipation of the morning, Jackson and Elizabeth sat before the fireplace in his living room, surrounded by wrapped presents and the soft glow of tree lights. I have something for you, Jackson said, reaching into his pocket. I wanted to give it to you privately, before tomorrow's excitement. He handed her a small, wrapped box. Elizabeth opened it carefully, gasping when she saw the simple but elegant ring inside. Jackson, it's not what you think, he said quickly. Or rather, not exactly. It's a promise ring. I know we haven't been together that long, and there's still so much to figure out. But I want you to know that I'm committed to this, to us, for the long haul. Elizabeth slipped the ring onto her finger, tears shimmering in her eyes. It's perfect, she whispered. And for the record, whenever you're ready to ask the other question, my answer will be yes. Jackson laughed softly. Noted. But I think we're doing this right, taking our time, making sure Lily is comfortable with every step. Speaking of Lily, Elizabeth said, reaching for her purse. I have something I wanted to discuss with you. She pulled out an envelope and handed it to him. Inside was a set of legal documents. Jackson scanned them, his eyes widening as he realized what they were. Adoption papers? Elizabeth nodded. Only if you both want it, of course. But I've come to love Lily as my own, and legally adopting her would ensure she's always protected and provided for, no matter what happens. Jackson was momentarily speechless, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Elizabeth was offering. You'd want to be her legal mother? I already feel like her mother in my heart, Elizabeth said simply. This would just make it official. The next morning, after the presents had been opened and Lily was happily playing with her new toys, Jackson knelt beside her. Lilybug, Elizabeth and I have something important to ask you. Lily looked up, her expression curious. How would you feel if Elizabeth became your mom? Not to replace your birth mother, he added quickly, but to be another parent who loves you and takes care of you. Lily considered this for a moment, her young face serious. Would she live with us all the time? Eventually, yes, Jackson said. We'd become a family. And would I call her mom? Elizabeth knelt beside Jackson. You could call me whatever feels right to you, Lily. Elizabeth is fine, or anything else you're comfortable with. Lily nodded thoughtfully, then asked, Does this mean I'd have a mom to come to Mother's Day tea at school? Because last year I had to bring Grandma in, and she doesn't speak much English, so it was hard for her to talk to the other moms. Jackson and Elizabeth exchanged glances, both fighting back tears at the simple practicality of a child's concerns. Yes, Elizabeth said. I would be there for Mother's Day tea, and school plays, and everything else. Lily smiled then, a wide, gap-toothed grin that illuminated her entire face. Then yes, I want Elizabeth to be my mom. She threw her arms around Elizabeth's neck, nearly knocking her over with the force of her enthusiasm. Elizabeth held her tightly, her eyes meeting Jackson's over Lily's shoulder, both of them silently acknowledging the magnitude of this moment. 6 months later, on a perfect summer day, 3 events were celebrated at once: Elizabeth and Jackson's wedding, Elizabeth's legal adoption of Lily, and the 5th anniversary of the Harrington Foundation. The ceremony was held in the garden of the Family Resource Center, surrounded by the families whose lives had been changed by their work. Sara, now the Foundation's mentorship program director, served as Elizabeth's maid of honor, while her toddler son was the ring bearer. Lily, radiant in a flower girl dress she had helped design, proudly walked down the aisle scattering rose petals before her new mother. As Jackson and Elizabeth exchanged vows, he couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From a chance encounter with a crying young woman to building a family and a legacy that would impact generations to come. I never expected any of this, he whispered to Elizabeth during their first dance. When I saw that eviction notice 3 years ago, I thought it was the end of everything. Instead, it was just the beginning, Elizabeth replied, resting her head against his shoulder. Sometimes the darkest moments lead us exactly where we need to be. Later that evening, as the celebration continued around them, Jackson found himself standing with Sara, watching Elizabeth and Lily dance together, their matching dresses twirling. You know, Sara said, that day in the coffee shop, when you gave me that hot chocolate? I wasn't supposed to be there. I was actually assigned to a different location, but I switched at the last minute because I wasn't feeling well. Jackson looked at her, surprised. So our meeting was completely by chance? Sara smiled. Or fate. Elizabeth doesn't like to admit it, but I think some things are meant to be. As the years passed, the Harrington-Miller family grew in unexpected ways. They fostered several children in crisis situations, eventually adopting twin boys who had lost their parents in a car accident. The foundation expanded nationally, with resource centers opening in cities across the country. On the 10th anniversary of that fateful day in the coffee shop, Jackson stood once again at a podium, this time addressing a national conference on family support services. Elizabeth sat in the front row, now with streaks of silver throughout her hair, surrounded by their children. Lily, now 16 and already talking about studying social work in college, and the twins, Robert and Richard, energetic 10-year-olds who had brought new joy to their lives. 10 years ago, Jackson began. I was a desperate single father facing eviction, working 2 jobs and barely keeping my head above water. Today, I stand before you as living proof that kindness, both giving it and receiving it, can transform lives in ways we never imagine. He paused, looking directly at his family. We often think that to change the world, we need grand gestures or enormous resources. But sometimes, all it takes is a cup of hot chocolate and 5 minutes of genuine attention. Sometimes, the smallest act of compassion creates ripples that become waves. That evening, as Jackson and Elizabeth walked hand in hand through the garden behind their home, watching their children play in the twilight, she squeezed his fingers gently. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stopped to help Sara that day? She asked. Jackson considered the question. I'd like to think our paths would have crossed eventually. That some things are just meant to be. Elizabeth smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. The pragmatic businessman believes in destiny? I've corrupted you. Or maybe you've completed me, Jackson replied, kissing the top of her head. Either way, I'm grateful every day for whatever force brought us together, chance, fate, or just the simple human instinct to help someone in need. As darkness fell and they called the children in for dinner, Jackson took one last look at the life they had built together, a family formed not by blood but by choice, a foundation helping thousands of struggling parents, a love that had grown from the most unexpected beginning. Sometimes the universe has a way of bringing the right people together at exactly the right moment. For Jackson Miller, that moment came when he decided to help a crying stranger named Sara. For Elizabeth Harrington, it came when she recognized the extraordinary character of an ordinary man. And for little Lily, it came when she gained not just a mother, but a family larger than she could have imagined. In the end, it wasn't wealth or status that made their story remarkable, but the simple truth that compassion, when freely given without expectation of return, has the power to transform not just individual lives, but entire communities. Jackson and Elizabeth's legacy would live on not just in the foundation that bore their names, but in the countless acts of kindness inspired by their example, each one creating its own ripple of change in an ever-widening circle of impact. And it all began with a cup of hot chocolate and a moment of genuine human connection. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Remember that kindness costs nothing but can be worth everything to someone in need. Share this message with others who might need a reminder that sometimes, the darkest moments in our lives can lead to the brightest futures, if we keep our hearts open to both giving and receiving help along the way.